I'm all right. Hell no. Joaquin said dominate, and we not doing it.
Steer from the 3. Streaks across the 30. He might be gone.
It's up. Gaston to the right. Oh,
they got blockers. They got blockers. They've got a lane.
Into the end zone. Touchdown, Miami. Darrell Langham with the grab.
Stars intercepted. Look out. Trajan Bandy, the true freshman. We got the truth again.
Because when the U is on and the U brings it, there's nothing like it. We got to get there. And it's going to take everybody.
What's up, Canes fam? Welcome back to another episode of Miami Nights. It's Thursday, and you know what that means. It means we've got a little game prep to get to. And this week, it's a little in-state rivalry. Miami, Florida. Not much has to be said. I know programs are having a little bit different starts to the season, but it's going to be a good one. Nonetheless, a big matchup down there at Hard Rock Stadium. So very excited, and very excited, too, to have Daniel here with Gator Truth Podcast. So they are a member of the College Huddle, and really excited to kind of get into some detail, get into the nitty-gritty about what's going on with the Gators program. Daniel, how are we doing?
I overall pretty well. I mean, football season could be better, but it is what it is sometimes, right?
For sure. It's good that other things are going well. So, well, let's get into it. I want to know a little bit about, just tell me a little bit about your podcast. How long have you been covering the Gators for? What kind of got you into it?
Okay, well, what's funny is I had on message boards essentially been doing like game review articles for years, just like here's a post, here's my thoughts or whatnot. And then around 2020, my younger brother had an idea of, hey, let's start a podcast. And then we recorded a test episode, but that never released. And then in 2022, he had said, hey, let's actually do the podcast. It's Napier's first year. What better time to start than now? So I get all the stuff to do a podcast, and then due to job change, he no longer can do it. And it's like, I've already got this stuff. I might as well go ahead and just do it. So I've been doing this since 2022. It's been a lot of fun in the way that I've gotten to meet a lot of people through the College Huddle, but also a lot of Gator fans all over the place. So, and unfortunately, it's not been the best seasons to start off in covering, but we do what we do, right?
For sure. It'll make the good seasons that much sweeter when you've been pushing through it. Same with us on our side. Started it with my brother, then we brought on one of our best friends, but we started at Mario Cristobal's second year. So there's been some interesting moments for sure. I mean, we could have started this 20 years ago with Miami, and it would have been some tough seasons, but it is what it is. It's fun. And yeah, you guys seem to do a really good job over there. Seems to be a nice following you've got. So good stuff. Well, appreciate you jumping on. I do want to start with there's two big stories I feel like with the Florida Gator football team right now. I want to start with DJ Lagway. He's somebody that we saw briefly in the Miami game last year. He's somebody, quite frankly, we were terrified to play this year and thought that was going to be a reason Miami could lose this game. And then everybody knows what happened last week with the 5 interceptions. So would love to hear kind of your take on what's been going on with DJ Lagway. Do you still think he could be the guy? Like, how are we feeling with that quarterback position?
Personally, I do still think he can be the guy. However, I just don't know if that's necessarily in this offense, which has not really had any quarterbacks come and put up numbers. And quite frankly, a play caller who in their play calling career has never had a top 40 passing game, and career average is in the high 50s for national finish. So, although, yes, last week, plenty of bad decisions on DJ Lagway's part, but it's also, as another Gator podcast puts it very eloquently, the passing offense is on hard mode. Like, you rarely see just wide open guys, like schemed open, and we're talking, you can see quick pick routes, mesh routes, guys wide open, 5 yards down the field and run. You rarely see that in the offense. Last year, you heard your now fired defensive coordinator talking about he knew exactly what we're doing when we're going to do it. And so it's hard for me to know that perspective on this offense and then say DJ's not the guy. Now, obviously, plenty of things for him to work out. And doesn't help that some of the biggest growth for players between their true freshman year and their, redshirt freshman year or true sophomore year. And he didn't really practice in the spring at all, didn't practice in the fall until the last week. So now there's lots of catching up that mental reps will only do so much. And plus, he's had a few mechanical, footwork and things that have kind of gone off. So it's things he did well last year that now he's not doing well. So the question is, what can we really tell? How much is him? How much of it is the offense? And then also another factor is how much of it is Florida's quarterback coach is really an analyst. We don't have a set, here's the quarterback coach for Florida. So it's a nice little perfect storm of not knowing exactly what it can be. But I've always said, unless it's shown differently, I'm first going to blame the adults in the room. The one, and it's hard to say the ones making the big bucks now when DJ Lagway's, reportedly making millions. Yeah. But I'm still going to go to the guys who have, the loads of experience before I dump on a true sophomore. And that's not to say, again, that there weren't mistakes made, but to say, hey, he's not the guy 3 games into a season, I think is a little harsh, although some Gator fans have felt that way.
Yeah. I think, too, it's a good point kind of with the coaches, and because with a young kid like that, it becomes mental at a part of it. I mean, throwing 5 interceptions in one game, you need to have a coach that can kind of come in there and kind of set things straight and be like, let's simplify some of this. So not sure if any of that's at play too, but along the coaching, because on paper, this is a talented Florida Gator football team. I mean, Billy Napier has brought in some pretty good classes, and there's talent on that team. They were supposed to take a step forward this year from last year, albeit an extremely difficult schedule. It seems every year the Florida Gators schedule is just insane. But would you put most of the early season struggles on coaching at this point, or is there still a talent gap there that we're also seeing some of the struggles?
Personally, I'm going to put it all on coaching. I mean, there's no talent gap between USF and Florida as far as USF being more talented than we are. But this was also a team, that's returning 4 out of 5 offensive line starters, and that offensive line was pretty good last year once they figured out who they wanted their starters to be. Part of the problem in the Miami game was we were rotating the right side of the line almost every other drive trying to figure out what combination we wanted, which is a completely stupid thing to do in the first game of the season against a rival. But hey, coaching felt that was the best way to go, and they've learned since that maybe it's not. But with that said, team offensive line should have been a strength. You return DJ Lagway, who overall was pretty solid, while injured last year. Got injured in the Georgia game, comes back after a Texas loss, which he didn't play in, and beats Ole Miss, LSU, and wins at Florida State. Granted, by that point, they just want to be done with the season, and then beat Tulane. And I'll admit, yes, Tulane's second, third string in the bowl. But you think that would, that'd take another step. Plus, you return a ton of talent on the defense. You've got 3-year starters at safety. You've got guys like Devin Moore, who's in his 4th year starting at Florida, has never had an injury-free season. But when he's played, he's been an all-SEC type player. The thing is just trying to get him to play a whole season. And also, plenty of talent at the other position. So you expect a lot more from this team. In fact, I said in the preseason, so if any of your fans go look it up, they won't be like, oh, he really said this. I'll say it straight up. I thought Florida should start 4-0 because you've got, LIU, USF, who Florida should never be losing to, much less in the situation they're in, returning everything they did. And then LSU, massive turnover. You're talking replacing their entire offensive line, 4 out of 5 receivers, defensive line, most of their secondary. Defense, in my opinion, allows 7 points. The rest, are picks and a bad turnover play. Basically puts LSU in field goal range twice, and of course, pick 6. And then Miami, great offensive line returning, but you never know what you're going to get when you replace your top 7 receivers.
Mm-hmm.
You replace Martinez, but granted, 2 great backs behind him. I'm not going to downplay that. In fact, that's one thing I threw out there. Carson Beck last year, had struggles against some better teams. You replace, you know more than I do, but replacing a lot of that defensive line, replacing most of that secondary. If you're the team that you should be with Florida in year 4, returning what you return while you have LSU, Miami in these large transition years, you shouldn't be going in and thinking, oh crap, we're going to start 1-3. You should be thinking, we're beating these teams. So I say all that, and I wanted to go in detail about, I'm not just saying, oh, it's Miami, we should beat them.
Yeah.
It was more of a, Miami's in a high transition outside of that offensive line. If you can't take advantage of it now, when you return so much, which the big thing at Florida for years has been, or under Billy Napier, well, we don't have the guys in yet. We don't have a lot of people returning to fully have the systems in place. Well, now we do, and here we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, listen, I mean, in our preview show when we were talking about this Florida Gator game, right last week of August, we were the 2 things that we talked about that worried us about this game was, like I had already mentioned, DJ Lagway, and just we felt like Florida had the advantage there at the quarterback position, and then a stout Florida defense with Miami, a lot of question marks surrounding quarterback, wide receiver room. So I mean, I think that's what makes kind of this so disappointing on the Florida Gators season is just there was like a path to seeing that big step forward, and it's just been a tough start. But if we're talking about the coaches, what do you think is going to happen with Billy Napier? Right, putting you on the spot right now. What's happening? Is Miami his last game? Is that if they lose to Miami, is that it, or what do you think?
Well, in talking with people who are more in the know than I am, that's a giant question mark right now. If you guys come out and, kill us like you did last year, then very well it may be. There's also been some thoughts, and this is the camp I'm in, even if we were to get blown out or start 1-3 or whatever, part of me is like, you got to keep them through the Texas game, because if players play 5 games, they're not really going to opt out at that point, or they could, but they've already sacrificed a year of eligibility. And I'm trying to get an answer on if they were to opt out, for the season, not injuries and I got to have surgery, but just, hey, you fired my coach, I no longer want to play. How's that impact their NIL deals? I don't have an answer on that because, of course, maybe there's a financial consideration there. But long term, I think this is Billy Napier's last year. I could see Scott Strickland taking him, all the way through the FSU game at the end of the season. What I really am not looking, I'd rather it be earlier than later. What I don't want is we go through another spot where we get towards the end of the season after bad losses at the beginning of the season, and then do something right at the end and be like, hey, we're at 6-6, 7-5. Mm-hmm. Let's run it back a third year, which I know Miami. It's funny, College Huddle, I talked to the Tennessee Michael from Vol Fanatic show, and he's like, well, I love Napier, and at this point, I just know he's trolling because Tennessee fans, just like Florida fans, Miami fans or something, if you're being told to embrace 2 losing seasons, a 7-5 season, and if you're asked to embrace the 6-6, 7-5 season, it's like, are we ever getting back to where we want to be? Yeah. Or do we just say, hey, we need a change? And I think that's where we are as a program right now. Is many people started off before the season saying, hey, We kept him when we were looking at possibly being 5-7 last year. He did pull off 2 big victories, but this year 9-3, which a lot of people felt arguably with our schedule gets you into the playoffs. So it was in a way 9-3 is what he needs to be. I said that in my preview show. And then also some people said playoffs or bust. Me, I'm not convinced that 9-3 would have gotten you in the playoffs, so I kind of left that last part out, but that's where a lot of people are right now. Okay, if we're wrong, go ahead and win eight out of the final 9 games and show us that
Right.
you really deserve to be there. And as you said, we are now in the harder part of the schedule, and I think LSU, they're number 3, but I still would not be surprised if they finish 8-4 or 9-3 in the top like 15 to 20 range, 15 to 25 range rather than number 3 where they are now. But I could be wrong on that.
Yeah. And I definitely think the conversation would be different if that USF game didn't go the way it did, because then it's like you still had a bad loss at LSU, but it's at LSU. Now you have a chance to go play Miami. Like that, the USF, I feel like, was that kind of first nail going into the coffin. But and then how USF then looked against Miami last week, it was just bad. It was just not good for the Gators there. But all right, so we're talking big picture there on the season, but thinking about this game, it's still a rivalry game. I know on social media there's a lot of Miami fans that are not worried at all about this. I personally, any kind of rivalry game, like, both teams are just going to get up for it. There's so much talent on both sides. Like, you don't know what you're going to get. I think back to 2 years ago, the way Miami played Florida State, when a much better Florida State team, and Miami played them to the final minute there. So anything can happen. I want to ask you, Florida wins this football game if? Like, what are you looking at as kind of the big thing that the Gators need to do to have a chance to win this game? I shouldn't even say have a chance, because there's a huge, it's only at this point it's a touchdown spread, but how are the Gators going to win this game?
Well, they've got to be able to run the football, and my key, I give like keys for Florida to win every week, and the number one the last 2 weeks have been run the ball, which is a play on Jaden Baugh, our top running back, who it's been kind of weird, although we shouldn't think it's weird. We've seen the same thing where Billy Napier's split carries evenly or done questionable things with running backs that have the hot hand for 4 years now. Last week against LSU, Baugh ended up with 10 carries, 46 yards, 4.6 yards per carry, and only had 6 carries in the first half and only had 7 carries going into the fourth quarter. And meanwhile, the rest of the team was, I think we finished total as a team at 2.9 yards per carry. And obviously, DJ Lagway throwing 49 times when we're only down by 10 points. It's got to be better. And that offensive line, in a way, has been disappointing. But if I had to say Florida wins and that's if they can get Jaden Baugh going. I know you've got a pretty good defensive line despite the turnover. I know you've got some great linebackers, but if we can get that going, maybe that opens up some in the passing game. But if we're sitting there trying to throw the ball 49 times again, well, I don't like the Gators' chances at that point.
Along those lines of like personnel, who is, other than DJ Lagway, who's one player that there was some high expectations going into the season that you just need to see more out of in this game in particular, that needs to step up for the Gators to have a chance?
This is going to be one that may or may not be popular with Gator fans, but I'm going to say Tyreek Sapp. He's actually had a good year so far, but this is a fifth-year senior that I expected to have tons of sacks by now. I believe he might have 1 total. Now, LIU barely threw the ball when we faced them, but at some point, you've got to take down the quarterback, start making 2nd and 3rd and longs, and Florida's been very poor in the sack department. So if we want to, have the Carson Beck that we saw last year in Jacksonville, we're going to have to get pressure on them. We're going to have to hit them. And that starts with our most senior player on that defensive line, a guy who we considered when he decided to return for his redshirt senior year to be perhaps the biggest get for Billy Napier, and having him return and have that retention. But unfortunately, we've not seen that much on the defensive line. Last week against Nussmeier only had 0 sacks as a team. I say we only had 0 sacks. Wish we had more, but of course that leads to LSU not really have, although again, they only gave up 7 points, but I do think this Miami offense is a lot more dangerous than LSU's offense. And if we can't get Carson Beck uncomfortable, if we're letting him have all day back there, then I don't think this game gets much better than last year. But like you said, rivalry games are so much fun. Things can always change, and now you've got the added dynamic of Florida has two straight losses, has the we want revenge factor, and has now we're possibly playing for our coach. So
yeah, I was going to bring that up too, with like how this team is going to respond, because like, give me your take on, does it seem like the locker room, like, is Billy Napier kind of a player's coach? Like, it seems like the locker room likes him and there could be a rally around him to like really try to go out and win these games, or because I've seen it at Miami where it's like you get these early losses, your coach is on the hot seat, and then you get the team just kind of quits. So interesting to see which direction you think, regardless of wins, losses, but just overall, like how the locker room you think is feeling right now.
Well, that's an interesting question. Last year, of course, we saw them rally around and come back at the end, defeat LSU, defeat Ole Miss at home. Another tidbit I just want to throw in that your listeners may actually like or find interesting is Billy Napier has 0 wins against winning teams on the road as Florida Gators head coach. So unless you guys plan on going 2-7 the rest of the way, I think I did that math right, or 2-8. Well, yeah, 2-7 because you're 3-0. Unless you're planning on doing that, history dictates you're going to pull this one out. But anyways, with all that said, back to the locker room comment. Last year they did come together. He does seem like a player's coach. My cousin, who's about 10 years younger than I am, he had friends that played for Billy Napier at Louisiana when Napier first came in, and he said, my friend swears by Billy Napier. And so that was something good to hear. With that said, I'm curious to see how that turns out now that we're in, the second year of doing this, where last year maybe it was a lot of people's first year, where it's like, okay, well, now we're going through this again. And then also there was a former Florida Gator, I believe he was an All-American, at least All-SEC lineman, who posted on Twitter the other night that there is some locker room divide. And so who knows? It wasn't anyone regular, or, it wasn't anyone part of the team, but it is someone who has, somewhat been around the team at times. So I don't know what to make of that. I don't know if it was just, hey, I'm angry tweeting after this defense played so well against LSU, and then we still lost somehow. So we will see.
All right. Well, listen, it's game day, 7:30, ABC, College Game Days headed to Miami's campus. It will be on campus, not at Hard Rock. Give me final prediction, final expectations for this game.
Alrighty. I will admit I am biased, and I've ticked off plenty of Georgia fans throughout the years. Because, even in years where we've been bad, I've done this. And Trey from Doghouse Podcast, the College Huddle Georgia representative, he and I have a laugh about it. I don't pick against Florida as much as I probably should. I go with my heart with these picks. And I'm like, there's always a chance, because we've seen ridiculous upsets in college football. So, and this, I think, would be an upset at the way things have gone, at least so far for both teams. I would probably say that somehow Florida's defense keeps up the pace it's on. Somehow, some way, Florida gets scores. I'm going to go with 1917. I'm like, people, before anyone asks, what's a weird 19?
How do we get there?
How do we get there? Florida kicks 4 field goals, one way or another. Trace Mack doesn't miss 3 field goals like he did in the opener against LIU. He returns to 2024 form and maybe gets some like 50 yarders in there, which surprisingly he was more accurate in the opener with those lengths than he was for the shorter ones. So that's how we're getting there. We give up 17, but one way or another, whether it's a big punt return, whatnot, we get just enough, maybe get one touchdown.
So is this a game-winning field goal we're thinking?
You know what? Let's go ahead and say that. Game-winning walk-off field goal. Trace Mack's missed a few of those in his career, notably Arkansas 2023. Instead, we go into overtime and lose to a bad Arkansas team.
Yeah,
but
that game.
Yeah, so he's gonna redeem himself.
Right.
Gone this way and totally redeemed yourself. Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, I hate that pick, but I appreciate the loyalty there, and we're the same way. We do not pick Miami to lose very often. But last question before I let you go here, and it's okay if you don't have one off the top of your head, but do you have a favorite Florida Miami memory, a game that sticks out to you that you like to? That you maybe if Florida's down by a lot on Saturday, you'll kind of be thinking back to. Good thoughts.
Oh man, well, I think we've beaten Miami twice since I could remember watching football, and
yeah, we haven't played a lot, which in the recent years, which is a bummer, and I'm worried about after this game what that's going to look like in the future when we're going to play each other again. But yeah, sorry to cut you short.
No, that's fine. I mean, I was there for 2002, 2003, 2004 in person. Not many people went to that Peach Bowl, but I sure did. That was my New Year's Eve, 2024 or 2004. Jeez. That was a long time ago. 2008 was, for me, it was like, yeah, we beat Miami, but since y'all weren't at the top of your game, it didn't quite feel
you guys had
as great. But
yeah,
but then there was the frustration of that 2019 game after starting so well, basically needing the stay at the end. So it's not like some games I can look back on Florida State, Tennessee, Georgia, and be like, heck yeah, I remember those games just feeling great. Where it's like 2008. Felt decently good. 2019 was like, oh, we survived. Like it wasn't like
that was an ugly game. That was when I was like, no more week 0, please.
Yeah, for sure. But I'll tell you this: as I live in the Orlando area, very very nice drive home for me, rather than the hour and a half from Gainesville or driving back in 2013 from Miami after that loss. Like, heck. Yeah. But if I had a funny story to leave your listeners with, because I can't say for sure, I guess I should say, winning by multiple scores and Randy Shannon complaining about us kicking a field goal on 4th down rather than just turning the ball over on downs. If I had to, because you guys might find this funny. So 2003, of course, we take a massive lead and blow it and we lose. Well, my dad had driven down with us to Miami, decides he's not going to the game, stays in the hotel room. And I think it was after Deshaun Wynn breaks like the 65-yard touchdown run or something. He just goes to bed. Well, we get back to the hotel room after the game. He wakes up because we're coming in. And he goes, oh, man, wasn't that such a great game? And we're like, no, we lost. And he could not believe it because how would we have lost from the position he last saw us? And it's like
that's brutal.
Life finds a way. So I figured maybe your listeners would get a nice little laugh out of that one.
They certainly will. Well, Daniel, I really appreciate it. Thanks for hopping on. Everybody, Miami fans, if you want to get just some more intel, they're a great follow. Daniel does a great job of, and it seems like you go to most every game, or somebody from Gator Truth's at those games. So that's pretty cool.
That's me.
Nice.
I 43
So are you
straight games.
completely solo on this thing?
For now, I am. I
Nice.
really keep thinking about I need a co-host because I tend to do better when I'm bouncing off of someone else.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, make sure to give them a follow, fellow College Huddle Network podcast. But appreciate your time and good luck on Saturday. We'll see. We'll see what happens. All right.
Fingers
See everybody.
Yep.
Go Canes.
That sound.